The Atlanta Falcons are wrapping up back-to-back joint practices with the Miami Dolphins, and obviously we're not there, so we can't give you, but we can tell you what people, especially from the Miami side of things, have been saying. And I think the biggest thing that stood out, and maybe a reason why you're kind of talking a little bit more positively about the Falcons defensive line or pass rush, however they go about it, is that the defensive line, according to these Miami Dolphin beat writers, has been sort of dominating the Dolphins offensive line. Now, the Dolphins offensive line is notoriously very bad, so that has to be taken into account. And the very same thing happened last year when these two teams had joint practices. But the Falcons defensive line last year, especially at the beginning of the season, was pretty damn good. And I think more than anything, people were talking about how they struggled with different blitz packages. And are we going to see a little more creativity? Are we going to see Caden Ellis pass rushing? How are they going to incorporate all these pass rushers and these bodies that they do have, mix and match, confuse people, like get favorable matchups? I think that's what we're most hoping on, because talent for talent, this team doesn't have it. But if you can scheme up this talent and favorable matchups and get them behind the sticks, you really got a chance to do something defensively and maybe cover up the holes you have in the secondary.
Yeah, the same thing with Ryan Nielsen last year. It's called simulated pressure, where you don't actually send more than 4 people, but 4 guys, 4 pass rushers, but it looks like it. Last year Ryan Nielsen did it a bunch. It's called a AA mug gap, where you just mug up the right over the center. You put 2 linebackers, it'd be Caden Ellis and Nate Lamon, and then you only send 4 guys. And that's the kind of stuff that these beat writers are talking about, simulated pressure. And that's what's going to happen for this Falcons pass rush to be successful consistently.
There we go.
Excuse me. Because you said it. We don't have a guy that you can rely on to go in and win one-on-one with the best tackles or the best guards or the best center in the league. It's just not going to work consistently. I got that one the first try. So that's what's going to happen. So I think more than anything, I'm putting a little bit of trust in Raheem Morris and Jimmy Lake. We've got all these bodies. We have more depth this year than I can remember in quite a long time along the defensive front. Like, we have guys who are going to be second stringers that would be starting in years past. So that's a big deal for this Falcons defensive line. It's a great. I want to also mention on the offensive side of the ball, Jalen Ramsey, arguably the best cornerback in football. And the Dolphins also have a couple of other guys that are the real deal, especially going up against Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Falcons receivers, Drake London in particular, that's all I see is like Drake London did this, Drake London did that.
And Drake London fighting.
Michael Penix looks good. Kirk Cousins looks good. The Falcons offense looks good coming from the Dolphins beat reporters. So that's another thing that's just so exciting.
Fights between receivers and corners, especially in these joint practices,
and dogs.
They're very common, and it's usually when one player is dominating the other. Correct. And Drake London, I guarantee you, was getting the better of those battles, and it wasn't making the Miami secondary too happy. You saw the same thing with Tennessee when Malik Neighbors went 17 for 18 in a joint practice with 2 touchdowns, 17 catches on 18 targets. With 2 touchdowns.
Want to pause though with all the positivity on the defensive line and a potentially good Falcons pass rush. I'm going to say,
no wet blanket.
This is a controlled environment. This is a very controlled environment. So there's not, Mike McDaniel is not in his bag in terms of what his offense is going to look like. This is very vanilla stuff. And the same can be said for Raheem Morris and Jimmy Lake. So I want to temper expectations. The Dolphins offensive line sucked last year. It sucks this year. But we can be cautiously optimistic. It's a controlled environment. This isn't, where Mike McDaniel is using one play to set up another and it's going to make you guys look like an idiot. Like, they're just trying to get good reps. This is almost closer to, just who's the better man more than anything. And that's not how NFL football is played. But
yeah, especially when Mike McDaniel's on the other sideline calling the offense.
Especially.
Last thing I want to say about the double mug pressure when you have the 2 guys lined up in the A gap. Toughest thing to stop. As if you're an offense playing an NCAA, if you play NCAA, go try that thing out. It is so hard to read as a quarterback.
I don't know anything about that, but
it's the same thing. It's very
awesome.
Very similar in the way that you evaluate defenses when you're trying to get their pressure. All right, whether you're playing what's going to be open and when people are just going in and out and you don't know where the pressure is coming from. That's the same thing you're talking about right there.